Shalaiman, one of the most recent tunes that I've been obsessed with. If you search for Mirror Method Piano and go to the play along track section, search for SAR, you're gonna get the original version and a sort of play along track to practice that. A gorgeous Romanian tune that is definitely worth looking into, if only to help you figure out the so-called minor harmonic scale. Now, whatever instrument you're currently learning, or whatever instrument you end up with, keep in mind that the most important thing that you're working towards is getting your head around the tuning system. And the tuning system starts with something as simple as A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I would say it's important to lay it down the way I did right here. And I'll start it from scratch just to see what I've done actually. So this doesn't just illustrate the seven letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but also a very specific pattern that is very important in the tuning system, because all scales are derived from that same pattern. So what I've done in that is literally just mark 4 points as if it was north, south, west, east, and then in between each 2 points I have added 2 extra ones. It's not going to be as neat as the first one because I have a different perspective on it. But basically, after you've done that, you end up with 12 points. And 12 is one of the magic numbers in this so-called 12-TET tuning system. And at the very top, I have written A, skipped 1 dot, and wrote B. Right next to it, C, skipped 1 and wrote D, skipped 1 and wrote E. Right next to it, F, skipped 1 and wrote G. And that is the 7 natural tones, so-called. And from here, you can change or sharpen any of these. As long as you hold on to this same pattern, you're going to go through all the 12 different contexts, is what I call them, the fundamental context of this tuning system. You can download this from the website, again, if you Google Mirror Method Piano, and at the very back you have this 12 rows, a matrix of 12 rows and 7 columns, from which you can derive all the fundamental scales. Now, I'm holding this gorgeous honey, an old Hohner accordion, which is it's a faulty one, strictly speaking, and it's got some wonky notes on the basses here. But it's been a very useful tool for me, because especially these bass buttons are a great tool to help you understand how easy the tuning system has been designed to be. So nothing about it is accidental, nothing about it is random, everything has been thought of. And these bass buttons are the proof that that is the case. Now at the very top, you might have already learned about the so-called major scale, which is not the scale that you build when you start on A, but C. So the same sort of clockwise motion, but you start on C. Now, you might have heard about that already, but what I'm inviting you to think of most often is the so-called minor scale. So when you start on A, same clockwise motion, that will give you the 7 tones of the minor scale. And these bass buttons and the keyboard instruments, old keyboard instruments especially, have been designed around the idea of what we now call minor scales. So the logic is kind of related more to that than the major scale. Now, This is obvious on the bass buttons. So the uppermost second row button, second column button, first row, second column, will tell you which keys you have available if you want to play the entire scale. So if you start, press the button and then shift down, your 4 fingers are going to cover 4 buttons, and then fourth is going to be and that gives you the major scale. Now again, going back to this second button here, this is the one that you rely on to figure out whether you're going to have all the 7 tones of that scale or not. So again, if you start from here, you're going to get the so-called minor scale. So it's a lot, is what I'm saying, it's a lot more useful to think of everything in terms of minor scales, especially when it comes to these bass buttons. But it's also the case with the keyboard side, because there are some symmetries here that are more obvious when you look at a piano, because you're looking down. But there are some symmetries here that are very useful, especially for beginners. And on this particular diagram, they're indicated by the dots. So wherever you see the same amount of dots, that indicates that those scales are perfectly symmetrical. So they mirror each other on the keyboard side. Now, going back to this this matrix here is one of the most brilliant things about this particular instrument. So the exact same pattern repeats everywhere you go. Ideally, you would know exactly what these buttons are playing. So whether it's chords or notes, you would know exactly which notes are being played. But that is a journey to be taken at some point. It would take quite a bit of time to wrap your head around that side of things. Until then, this particular matrix is still accessible via that pattern that I showed earlier. So whatever your pointer finger number 2 lays on that second column, the same pattern applies where well, I have messed it up already, but it's the same idea. I should have practiced more of that, a bit more, just to be more prepared. But again, the idea is that whatever pattern you work with, that's going to apply the entire length of that column, of that second column, in terms of playing scales. There's some other complicated stuff on the rest of the columns. But for now, I'm just talking about playing scales, because wrapping your head around the idea that these 7 tones give you 7 different scales, fundamental scales is what I call them, because the tuning system sort of comes with those. So wrapping your head around the idea that you can build 7 scales with these 7 tones by simply starting on any of these different tones, that is a very important thing to wrap your head around. And as soon as you have done that, you're good to go and play pretty much any music from anywhere around the world. A lot of mainstream music is major or minor, so-called major and minor scales, but there are 5 more scales that music can and has been written in, and the moment you wrap your head around those other 5 scales, you can call yourself a proper beginner musician. Anyhow, I hope this helps, and give it a go if you have one of these, or if you have just a keyboard instrument. That's also worth giving it a go. Enjoy.